So you want to know about workplace retaliation. Maybe you think you were retaliated against by your employer, or maybe you're just curious what the law means. Anyway, you're in luck. I'm an employment lawyer, and in this video, I'm going to break down the law against retaliation. Stick around and find out. Nothing in this video is legal advice. Furthermore, the laws I'm talking about in this video are the laws of Washington State because I'm licensed in Washington State. Also, at the bottom of the video, I'm going to put chapters for all the things that I'm going to be talking about retaliation law. So you can skip ahead if you want to. All right, let's get started. So what is illegal retaliation? Well, to answer that question, let's first look at the law. So the law against employment retaliation can be found in RCW 49.60.210 subsection 1. And I'm going to read the law verbatim. It is an unfair practice for any employer, employment agency, labor union, or other person to discharge, expel, or otherwise discriminate against any person because he or she has opposed any practices forbidden by this chapter, or because he or she has filed a charge, testified, or assisted in any proceeding under this chapter. So that's all well and good, but what does that mean? Well, to put it simply, it just means that an employer can't retaliate against an employee who opposes or reports discrimination or harassment at work. So as you know from my other videos, discrimination and harassment are illegal employment practices. I'm going to put a link to my video on discrimination and harassment up here. Anti-retaliation laws are an added protection against discrimination and harassment. And how it works is if an employee reports discrimination or harassment, the employer can't then retaliate against the employee who reports it. That's what retaliation is. So let's use an example. Say Jane Doe is working at a company and her manager keeps hitting on her, making her feel uncomfortable. She goes and reports that to HR. That's the protected activity. Her reporting what she believes to be harassment is protected activity. Now her employer, her manager, her bosses, they can't then make her life uncomfortable, demote her, fire her, anything like that, or else that would be retaliation. The law seeks to protect workers who have the courage to report discrimination or harassment. Because workers that experience discrimination or harassment or see discrimination or harassment are oftentimes really worried about reporting it because they fear that they're going to be retaliated against. So the law offers this protection. So who is protected under Washington's anti-retaliation statute? Well, workers who report discrimination or harassment, workers who file a claim of discrimination or harassment, workers who participate in the investigation of discrimination or harassment, workers who oppose discrimination or harassment in any way. That's protected activity, and those workers are then protected by the statute. So what conduct is prohibited as retaliatory? Well, Washington courts prohibit any adverse employment action. And an adverse employment action is any tangible employment action that might dissuade a reasonable worker from engaging in the protected activity. So let me give you some examples of these tangible employment practices that might dissuade a worker. Suspension, reprimand, demotion, denial of a promotion, an unjust negative performance review. Obviously, termination. If an employer does any of those things in retaliation for a worker's reporting or opposing discrimination or harassment, that is illegal retaliation. Other kinds of retaliation are also illegal. For instance, employers are also prohibited from firing workers who engage in activities protected by public policy. For more information on public policy protections, see my video on wrongful termination. I'll link to it up here. But I'm going to list some other protected activities that employers can't retaliate against. For instance, if an employee reports any illegal activity of the employer or a coworker, if a worker reports unsafe working conditions, if a worker files a workman's comp claim, if a worker complains about an overtime violation, if a worker requests reasonable accommodations for their disability, if a worker requests leave of absence, if a worker blows the whistle, if a manager or a worker refuses to commit an illegal activity, like for instance, if a manager refused to discriminate against a worker, if a worker performs a public duty, like serving on a jury, if a worker exercises a legal right, like taking family or medical leave to take care of a sick family member. Those are all protected activities that an employer can't retaliate against. So now you know what illegal retaliation is, but what about if you win your retaliation case? Under Washington law against discrimination, workers that succeed in their retaliation claims can recover their lost wages and emotional harm. Lost wages include back pay and front pay. Back pay is the amount of salary you missed out on because you were fired. Front pay is the amount of salary that you're going to miss out on in the future because you were fired. Say for instance, you find a new job and you're paid less, or you don't find any work at all. The salary or the difference in salary that you're going to miss out on because you were fired, that's your front pay. And emotional harm is monetary compensation for humiliation, fear and anxiety, loss of enjoyment in life, all the things that go along with unjustly losing your job, losing a part of your identity. But the specific dollar amounts that you can recover in a retaliation claim are incredibly fact-specific. For instance, how strong is your evidence? How egregious was your employer's misconduct? What's the amount of your lost wages? Is your case going to go before a jury, or did you sign an arbitration agreement? All these factor in to the final monetary outcome if you win your case. But regardless of the monetary outcome, if you win your case, you're able to hold your employer accountable, which is a reward in and of itself. And hopefully, it will prevent the employer from hurting other workers. Okay, so now you know what illegal retaliation is under the law. It's an illegal employment practice for an employer to retaliate against a worker who opposes discrimination or harassment. Now, anti-retaliation laws are pretty complex. And in this video, I only gave a brief overview of the law. If you'd like to know more about retaliation and anti-retaliation laws, click the link in my description. I'm going to link to a comprehensive guide that I wrote on retaliation. And be sure to share this video with other workers. The more we hold employers accountable for their misconduct, the more we prevent them from harming other workers. And if you're in Washington and you think your employer retaliated against you, contact my firm for a free consultation. Okay, that's all for me this week. See you next time.